How you doing, everybody? And welcome back to Crime Theory with myself, Ron Swanson, and of course John Wedger on the Sean Attwood channel. Here to have you gripped for the next hour or so while we delve back into the true crime realm with John Wedger's vast knowledge on an abundance of crime that has covered the UK and a little bit further, shall we say? But how are you doing this week, John? And what's been going on in your world? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm busy. I'm still working with ex-offenders and the autistic kids. So everyone's sort of back at school. The world's gone back, and it. So
Yeah.
it's busy times. It's a crazy time in the world as well. I think there's a lot of people struggling now.
Yeah.
There's signs of an economic downturn. But in respect to the work that we've been doing and the products we've been putting out there, I've had huge response. A lot of stuff regarding Beverly Alley
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and the Lesley girl. A lot of people saying, yeah, massive similarities.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the Detroit. I mean, it's huge. What I didn't realise, because there's quite a big community out there that have really been following the Detroit stuff and coming up with the same conclusions that we have. That
Oh,
this is a very, very
John,
dark, sinister world.
I lay awake the other night, right? And I was thinking about the Moors murders. Then I was thinking about Savile and the West and the Ripper. And what was the other guy? Knox, the Dirty Dozen.
Uh, yeah, Sidney Cook.
Cindy Cook, that was it. Cindy Cook and Dutroux. And it all just starts piecing together like the handler theory, the procurer theory, and it's almost like I say, it's almost like this cycle where they give up a certain level of serial killer or psychopath to put the attention onto that one individual and take all the attention off of the bigger picture. And when we look at how the cases are handled, the judges, the incompetency that goes into it all, it really is a chart that paints a picture over the last, 60, 70 years that is shocking and undeniable. There is a definite procurement of children across the world that is happening. And in certain cases, there is a serious lack of investigation and a incompetency in the handling of a lot of the evidence. I mean, am I wrong?
Well, get this. What I did know this, but I failed to mention it. Dutroux Mrs. Michelle, she served, I don't know how many years, but she served 12 or so years. When she was released, she went for a small period of time to live in a convent, as if that's going to help her, a Catholic convent. She did a few years there, and when she came out the convent, she went and married a guy, and the guy she married was the trial judge for Detroux's case.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
I mean,
what do you say to that?
yeah, it's just, and people say there's no cover up, but look, what these things just come to me. I mean, Detroit, I thought was the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
I'm going to take us to a place in the
Oh,
UK now,
okay.
and this, this one will put make the hairs stand on the back of your neck, your hand, wherever they are. This is smacks of everything we spoke about. It's very Detroit, but this also links in with near enough every single case that we
Oh
mentioned.
God.
But bar the not so much the children, but especially like the women who murder. But this is a very it was very well known in its time. It's not so much now that it's coming to prominence, but we're going to resurrect it tonight.
Okay.
Um, but this is something that shocked a community, and
Okay.
we're going to see consistencies in locations, in suspects, in modus operandi, MOs, method of operating. We're gonna go into the world of British politics, the judiciary, police malpractice, incompetence, the penal system, and everything with this case.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
is an appalling case. on so many levels, and it was dramatized allegorically in the Channel 4 phenomenal trilogy that Channel 4 did called Red Riding. And I've mentioned this many times,
Okay.
and I implore people to watch it. It did get removed from Channel 4's listings, but you can still find it on BritBox and things like that. I think there was a lot of pressure on Channel 4 to remove it because of the accuracy, the allegorical accuracy of that trilogy, and it's all to do with police corruption, child murder, political espionage, celebrity peoples, and ritualistic murder in the West Yorkshire area. And we're going to bring that to life tonight with the very, very, very sad murder of a very vulnerable 11-year-old girl from the Turf Hill area of Rochdale. Again, Rochdale seems to crop up constantly. It recently cropped up a few years ago with the child trafficking, child grooming, and police cover-ups in that region, dramatised in the BBC documentary Three Girls. And the police officer in there is a friend of mine, and through a lot of similarities in what she endured as to what I endured. So I've taken interest in this region.
Okay.
Also, we got to look at who politically represented this region, and I'm going to go on about this individual at some point during this narrative. But the poor little girl is a little wee lassie called Leslie Molseed. She died at the age of 11 years. She was very, very small for her age. She weighed 3 stone, this girl.
Wow.
She had to have open heart surgery as a child, and as a result, she suffered with her physiology, but also she was what we would class as retarded. She was backward intellectually, mentally, and maybe emotionally. I'm not too sure, but she was classed as a very sweet, dear girl from a very loving, kind family from the working class council estate of Turf Hill, Rochdale. She was born on the 14th of August 1964, this little girl, and she lived in what is a nice community, and she come from a nice family, and the family, the kids would all have to help out with the household chores, and so it might be washing up or running errands to the shop, things like that. And on the 5th of October 1975, at about midday, her mother was preparing lunch for her and her 2 siblings, and they were short of air fresheners and a loaf of bread. So a few pennies was given to little Leslie by mother and sent to the local shop, which was on the estate, so she could go and pick these bits up and come home, and mum could prepare dinner and what have you. Unfortunately, little Leslie never turned up alive anyway. Her body was discovered 3 days later, 8 a.m. in the morning on the 8th of October 1975. Her poor little body was found laying next to the Transpennine railway line in Rishworth Moor, West Yorkshire. Um, her body was displayed in a bizarre position, I think with her legs open. I'm not too sure. I'll have to check on that.
Okay.
But she died from stab wounds, multiple stab wounds, 12 stab wounds, and all from the back, and one of them had gone through her body into her heart. What was interesting, there were no defence stab wounds, so it wasn't as if the girl knew what was coming. So she was just attacked from the back by the look of
Oh
it. But
God.
there were signs of sexual interference. She'd been sexually assaulted before and after her death, and semen was found on her body. So a local guy, a worker, he was travelling back from somewhere, and he'd stopped on a lay-by on this Transpennine route to have a rest, and he slept in his van overnight, and then he'd go up in the morning, and sort of about 9 meters up this cliff from the road edge, he saw some clothing, and he decided to take a walk up, and that's where he discovered this poor little girl's body. So the police were called. crime scene was put up, and there was basic investigation work was taking place, and her clothing was seized, and fibres from her clothing, everything else was taken, and the police went about their work. There was a lot of pressure on the police to come up with results. So this is where we start. It gets dark, dark indeed, and sometimes the police can make things fit. You know, we used to call it, when I was in the police, the Ways and Means Act. So it's all down to acts of law, you know, statute acts.
Okay.
And one of them we used to nickname the ways and means. There's always a way and there's always a means of getting what you want. Now, on a lower level, it's still corruption, it's still perverting justice. And I'm in no way saying that I've ever been involved in this. I think, you know, just have to draw your inference from that one. But it was common practice, whether it was falsifying evidence, planting evidence, saying someone was somewhere where they wasn't, you know, and if everyone sticks together, who are they going to believe, you know?
Yeah.
It sort of started dying out, that attitude, sort of late 90s. I mean, really, when CCTV came along, to be honest, that started going out. So, especially when I joined in the early 90s, you know, that way of policing was alive and well. I joined, you know, shortly after the inception of PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which came in 1984. I joined shortly after that, and that really gave prisoners rights, that they are entitled. Like the caution says, you do not have to say anything, blah blah blah. It's all part of PACE, you know, the welfare of the prisoner and how information evidence is elicited, and the provenance of that. Before that, it was pretty much like the Wild West. Anything went, and handwritten statements were commonplace. And the strange thing is, Scotland is totally different in their judicial. It still works on the same common law system that we do. But even to when I was serving, Scotland still had the right to interview a suspect, just handwritten, transcribed, and it could be done in pencil. So you can imagine how much that could be open to.
Of course.
You know, so we've got this rural community in West Yorkshire, and this little girl's missing. She's now found dead, and it's a sex motivated murder of a very vulnerable, very underweight 11-year-old girl who probably didn't look 11. She was tiny, by all accounts. So maybe her attacker was looking for someone younger. And like we mentioned before, I don't believe this when these children are abducted, days later found, and there was sexual interference. I don't think it's down to one person. I proclaimed that from the start of doing this series, and I'm going to continue doing that with this. And I'm going to bring forth some information. I'm going to elicit some information in this, which hasn't been heard before. It has, but not in the same context as I'm going to do it. I'm going to put together a conspiracy of suspects here, that they are conspiring together, they're co-defendants. What I'm saying, and this is the first time I think this has been put forward in this case. All right. So
exciting. I'm excited to hear what you've got, John.
Yeah. When you research this case, it gets darker and darker and darker, and it's honestly, it didn't fail to deliver all throughout my research of this case. And again, the murder of Leslie Molseed, not very well known. However, the suspect that they brought in, who later became the accused, was a man called Stefan Kiszko. Kiszko. Kiszko is a Ukrainian surname. So this guy, back in the day of 1975, he was 23-year-old. He was a tax clerk from the Ukraine. His parents were ethnic Ukrainian. He himself was retarded. He was a big guy for his age. He was a nice fella. He was an upstanding, innocent guy. He lived with his mum. His father had died. And he was just a very quiet, shy, but well-liked individual. He had a nice job with the tax office as a clerk, and he did drive a car, but he was backwards. And an assessment of him said that at the age of 23, he had the mental and emotional age of a 12-year-old. So he was a bit what we might used to call a bit soppy,
Okay.
right? And he didn't hurt anyone. However, he goes up as a suspect for the murder. One sec. Hi, Andrew. Sorry, Ron. I'm back with you.
Yeah,
Right.
no problem, no problem.
So what happens is that he has a medical condition where his bollocks hadn't dropped, to be vernacular about this. So he was taking testosterone to because he had undersized testicles. They hadn't dropped, and the testosterone kick-started his body growing process, and he sort of went into puberty very, very late.
Okay.
Uh, he was quite an innocent guy, and of course he starts then getting like male feelings, and he starts masturbating, but very late in life. So he buys porno mags, and that's his little secret. He hides them in his car, and he would have a read of these porno mags
Okay.
away from home and things like that. That was his like his little quirk, as it were, right? But apart from that, anyway, but he was well known in the area. It's just been a bit soppy and a bit simple. A taxi driver. It's mixed information here. One report says a taxi driver, one says a cab driver is having a piss, and four girls are coming out of a youth club. They see this taxi driver having a piss, and they get all a bit alarmed about it. Anyway, the guy sort of buggers off, but they go to the police, and they tell the police that it was actually Stefan, because they saw Stefan sitting in his car with dirty books, and so they decided to blame him for a laugh, thinking nothing would come of it, and it was
Okay.
just a joke, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, the police decide he could be a suspect, so they go and bring him in, right, and they arrest him. Now, Stefan, they arrest him in December. And bear in mind, this takes place in October. So come December, they're desperate to nick someone, and they bring him in, and then they subject him to 3 days of basically torturous interrogation. He is simple. He needs his mother with him all the time. He's got this intelligence of a 12-year-old. He's very naive and emotionally, he's very, very immature. And he's now got the full front of
Oh
the
man.
West Yorkshire serious crime investigation team breathing down his neck. He's not allowed a solicitor, and he's not allowed an appropriate adult, both of which he was entitled to. Now, on the day the murder occurred, he was actually at his dad's grave, many miles away, tending it with an auntie. So he had an alibi. Also, he'd broken his ankle, and his foot was in plaster, and the body was found up a cliff face 9 meters above the road level, you know. So you'd have to climb up 9 meters of rock to get up to look at this body.
Okay.
He had his foot in plaster, and he was grossly overweight because he used to
So
eat a lot
it
of
was
sweets.
he was already his leg was already in plaster when the crimes had occurred.
Yeah. So
Okay.
physically, he couldn't have put the body there. Um, he wasn't there anyway. He was elsewhere, and that was later corroborated. But also, and now here's a clincher: the semen that was found. There was no DNA recognition back then,
Okay.
but they could analyze semen. So the semen that was found, they kept the semen sample from the clothing, and it had sperm in it. It had what they call sperm head. So it was someone who produces sperm. Now, because of his condition, Stefan Kiszko could not produce sperm. He just produced semen. So he was impotent,
Okay.
right? Anyway, this information was presented to the police. He was asked to give a semen sample and all sorts of things, and they withheld it. and they bullied this guy for 3 days. And it was now Christmas Eve, and he was basically told, if you admit to it, you can go home, because he just wanted to go home to his mum for Christmas. So he
Jesus.
admits to it, and one of the coppers handwrites a statement of which he signs, believing he's going to go home. He's
Oh
not.
my God.
He's taken straight to the custody desk, and he's charged with the murder of Leslie Molseed. He's remanded. Okay, and it goes to trial. He gets a solicitor, and his solicitor uh, straight away makes him retract his statement, saying, "No, we're going to make a new statement. You know, this is wrong." And he's admitted that he lied, because when he told the lies that he actually killed the girl, it made the police smile and made them happy. Now, this is where the rules of evidence comes in, and especially as not only an interviewer of children and vulnerable people, I
Yeah.
actually taught interview skills, what they call achieving best evidence (ABE) interviewing,
Okay.
which is a very disciplined and skilled practice of getting information from society's most vulnerable. And the way you do it is very strict, and it's all to do with opening questioning, because children do something called acquiesce. A child will want to please the adult,
Yeah.
so they
Okay.
will say things that make the adult happy. So an example would be, if a child has evidence of their abuser driving a red car, and when asked the colour of the car, the child says green car, and the adult sort of grimaces slightly, the child will change that narrative and select a colour that makes the officer smile. So that's why interviews of vulnerable people and children are recorded, video recorded, not with one camera but with two cameras, and one of the cameras is on the interviewer, and to make sure that they don't make any facial gestures or any hand gestures.
Oh wow.
You
Okay.
know,
That's really
minimal
interesting.
encourages with your
Yeah.
hands and things like that, because the kid will want to please the adult. And this guy is actually a child, really, you know, in his mind and in his heart. So he starts saying things that makes the adults happy. So they said, "Did you kill him?" Yeah, and they all started really G and this gone.
You broke up a little bit there, John.
Yeah. Sorry, I think there's a huge echo on the line.
Oh, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Speak now.
Hello.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Yes, better. Yeah, it was an
Right.
echo before. I thought it was me.
No bother. Right.
So anyway, so he ends up going to trial, and his mum's making these protest stations that her son can possibly have done it. But the public's happy. The public's so happy with it. And he gets a defence barrister, a bloke called David Waddington. And David Waddington later went on to become the Home Secretary. But David Waddington made two of the biggest errors of his career in this case. Huge defence errors. He actually put up two defences. So one of them was that the client was on medication, and it could have altered his mindset, which was medically untrue. It didn't alter his mindset. And he also then put up a defence that his client is happy to admit to.
Thank you for watching the podcast. Here's a word from our sponsor, Rocket Money. Don't you hate it when you've got subscriptions out there that you don't know about, taking all that cash out of your account? I recently found out I had 4 Amazon Prime subscriptions. Now I've got it down to 1. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills, all in one place. Most people think they're spending $80 on their subscriptions, when in reality the number is closer to $200. When you're signed up for so many things like streaming services you used to watch one show, or free trials for delivery you don't use, it's so easy to lose track of what you're paying for. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Sean, SHAUN. That's rocketmoney.com, SHAUN, rocketmoney.com/Sean. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Link is in the description box on YouTube. Back to the podcast.
Manslaughter.
But how can you put up two
basically putting
defences?
his client massively in the frame, and also on the first day of trial, a huge amount of unseen disclosure was brought forward. Now, in a trial, you are not expected to formulate the case against you. That's for the prosecution to do. And any new, that was it. It's called additional new evidence. A notice of additional evidence. Notice of additional evidence. Yeah. NAE. If any of that is brought in, the trial has to be stopped because you need to go through that additional evidence to see if any way it assists your case or undermines the case for the prosecution. So they're the two key factors in any trial. Do the prosecution, because they have to bring the case, do they hold information which will assist the defence or undermine their case? And they need, if they've got that, they need to put it forward. And a lot of coppers used to deliberately withhold that. They did. And it's called disclosure now.
Okay.
But back then, the rules were still the same. The rules of court haven't changed really in hundreds of years. And he should have, old David Waddington, should have stopped. He would have had just cause then to stop the trial and go through this evidence. He didn't do it. They just cracked on regardless. Okay. So all of a sudden, it's going against this guy straight away. He changes his story many times over the 3 days because he's confused and he's retarded, and he's frightened and he's vulnerable. So it's not going his way.
No.
These girls come forward and they lie. They say perjury that they saw Stefan flashing, getting his willy out, which is a lie. They were later to be commended for their bravery and their honesty, and this has all got a twist to it. The two detectives that ran the case, right, was a DS John Ackroyd and a DS Holland. I get Holland's other name because this guy, we really need to know, make a note of this guy Holland.
Okay.
Because Dick Holland, DS Dick Holland, later on becomes Superintendent Dick Holland. And keep a note of this fella because he's a bad penny and he crops up a lot in these inquiries. So a majority verdict, 10-2 verdict, comes up with guilty for what really is an innocent man. He's then, Stefan is sent to HMP Armley in Leeds, and he is attacked from the moment it goes on. He's given life.
Oh my God.
And he gets life. He gets 30 years.
This guy with mental problems who clearly shows signs of being simple and very young in the mind. He has a broken leg, and the crime has occurred over terrain that he needs to climb. You've already said that he was unfit, and clearly we're in an era of police work where pencils and coercion when it comes to getting statements are a lot less easy to prove. I mean, how is this all coming? I know we're about to get there. I'm just making sure I understand the gravity of this.
Yeah, of course. And the police deliberately withhold the key information that Stefan cannot produce sperm. He can produce semen, but not sperm. The key evidence here is semen and sperm were found on this girl. He can't produce it. He medically can't produce it. Right? His testicles don't work like that. They do not produce sperm, and sperm is found on there. So he and they rely on the ignorance of his family being migrants and him being a simpleton. He is given, and of course he looks the part. He's just a big galumph of a man.
Yeah.
And he doesn't look right. So we're now seeing this happening time and time again in the British justice system. I mean, look at the Jill Dando one that we covered earlier,
of course,
with Barry George, aka Barry Bulsara. Again, very similar character.
Yes,
but
again,
and
it's. Do you think it's just the tried and tested method of pinning
Yeah,
the blame on the vulnerable.
yeah. And they get a result. The public gets what the public wants. They can all rest easy. Child murder has been caught. Everyone's happy, and these coppers are commended. And what they've done is they've just stitched up a retarded bloke, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, that's all they've done. Over 3 days, bullied and beat him up. He then gets sent away for life, and he basically, his life inside is a living hell. He is brutalized for the next 16 years.
Jesus.
You know, and that is his life. His
Because
mental
of
health
course
goes
you
into it.
would have went in as a child abuser and a child killer, which I can't
Yeah,
imagine a moment in time where that goes down well in prison, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah. I mean, within his first day, he gets moved about a lot. You know, within his first day of going into Wakefield prisoner, he's set upon by 5 prisoners, and they basically smash him to pieces. He's then a little bit later, he's attacked with a mop, and his head is split open. He's constantly punched in the face for no reason. There's no sympathy given to him from prisoners or guards. Yeah, this is why a very important investigative tool is the timeline. And I used to teach this when I was a tutor at the Crime Academy. And I'd say draw a formulated timeline, because you start picking out inconsistencies and patterns. Now, this guy starts becoming very, very unwell. He puts in constantly for appeals because he's innocent. And he keeps getting told, if you can't appeal unless you admit your guilt. Um, and he's encouraged throughout to plead guilty. He even gets a placement at the rehabilitation prison, which is HMP Grendon, and he's told, you know, we can help you, but you've got to plead guilty, and he refuses to. He's eventually sectioned in 1991 because his mental health just is going to pieces. But what happens is his mum refuses to give up, and she is having the door slammed in her face constantly. But here's one: her MP refuses to help her in any way whatsoever, right? Throughout. She
Okay.
constantly goes to her MP, and he stonewalls her throughout the whole timeline of this. Right, now, we're going to go into dark, dark territory here. And this has
Okay.
never, ever, and I'm telling you now, no inquiry, no independent inquiry, no review, nothing. Parallels been drawn here, and we're going to do them tonight.
All right.
His MP for where he lived was MP called Cyril Smith.
Oh my God.
Right.
Oh my
Now,
God.
Cyril Smith, the MP that was caught with child pornography, accused of multiple sexual offending against children,
Yeah, I know Cyril
was a
Smith.
regular at Elm Guest House,
Yeah.
a violent child abuser of a man. He's the MP. And many, many applications went to Margaret Thatcher, who did exactly the same. Now, let's go back to this period when Margaret Thatcher was in office. She had Leon Britton as a Home Secretary, many allegations against him. She had, who was it? Was it Patrick Rock or one of them? A political advisor, was known for failure. She had more members of her cabinet that were either accused of or convicted of offending against children than any other PM. So,
Jesus.
but it gets darker. It gets darker. So,
That's no, but Cyril Smith, man. I mean, he is nightmare fuel. Cyril
yeah,
Smith.
yeah, and of course, look, this girl goes missing. But I'm going to save this bit because we're going to move on
Sure, 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 sure.
slightly, and this will all come anyway. So, a solicitor takes up the case, a guy called Campbell Cleggs, um, and he petitions the Home Secretary in 1989, and the case gets reopened in 1991. And they managed to find this medical evidence that had been suppressed, deliberately withheld from disclosure. They also found witness evidence that our man Stefan was at his father's grave. So they've now got the medical reports saying that he couldn't produce sperm,
And of
and that
course,
sperm was present in semen
when you
on the dead body.
when you pin it on someone like that, and they come out of their sentence. I mean, who's paying attention?
Well,
You see what I mean?
this gets so dark, this case, because someone from the medical profession, as a result of this case, then suggested that any sort of medical investigation done should be separate from the police, and they were instantly struck off from the medical register for suggesting that. The four girls were re-interviewed, and they all admitted they lied. Two of them were later found guilty of perjury and cautioned. Okay, the judge
This is a nightmare.
apologized for commending the girls, but he wouldn't apologize for how he conducted the case. DS Dick Holland, he maintained the investigation was done with due diligence all the way through. He was later also to have a file to be charged with perverting the course of justice, but the case never went to trial, and it was dismissed. So on the 17th of March 1992, Stefan Kiszko was exonerated by the Court of Appeal. He was awarded £500,000 compensation, which he never received. And unfortunately, a few months later, he died. And then a few months after that, his mother died as well.
How did he die? Do you know how he died?
He had a heart attack, and then his mother died shortly afterwards.
If that's not the definition of a tragic family tale, I have no clue what is.
How awful! But when we look, that this guy never murdered the girl. DS Dick Holland was charged with perverting the course of justice. It never went to trial. DS Dick Holland was later promoted to superintendent, and he was later the senior investigating officer who screwed up monumentally the Ripper murders.
So he's their boy. He's their boy. I mean, he's
their boy.
He's their boy, man.
Exactly.
Jesus.
And we mentioned Sutcliffe earlier. Again, Red Riding, please, that trilogy Red Riding, it alludes to every single bit of what we're saying. And this case gets spookier and spooky.
Do you know, this is the first week where I've actually felt a bit sick.
Yeah, it's all
getting a bit real. It's getting a bit real now.
All the way through all of these, that when it's the children abducted and murdered, there never is a lone wolf. Never. Right now, what happens is the police. There's a reinvestigation into this. Right, so they get this guy in who looks at the case, and he maintains that the number one suspect for this, right, is let's just find this, is a guy called Raymond Hewlett. Right, so Raymond Hewlett, he kept saying it's Raymond Hewlett. Now, Raymond Hewlett he had a van. He had an ex-GPO, turquoise ex-GPO Morris Minor type van, which was seen by 14 independent witnesses on the estate when the girl goes missing, at the location where the girl goes missing. It's also seen shortly before the body is found, and it's parked up in a lay-by nearby. Right, a guy, because he's a wiry Sydney cookie type bloke. A guy matching Raymond Hewitt's description is seen climbing up this cliff with a young girl, right, or carrying a young girl or something, right?
This is
right.
Okay.
Now, Raymond Hewlett, right? Hewlett is the number one suspect. He does a runner the day of the day the girl's body is found. He does a runner, and he ends up going to Ireland, and he goes on the run. He's got convictions in 1972 for the abduction and rape of a 12-year-old girl. In 1978, he is jailed for the attempted rape of a 14-year-old girl. And in 1988, he abducts a 14-year-old girl with the intention of raping her. Okay? He's a petty criminal. He's violent to his children. He's a prime suspect. Now, he's got traits of Brian Fields, this guy. Right? Traits of Brian Fields.
Okay.
Again, very, very similar character. But what is his occupation? Have a guess what his occupation is.
Oh, fairground worker. High school.
Fairground worker.
Fairground worker. Nailed it.
Amen. 100% well done. Top of the class. He's a fairground worker. Right. Now, he's not arrested for this. He later goes on to become a suspect for the Madeleine McCann abduction or alleged abduction. Years later, he crops up again in Portugal.
So he's the nabber, right? He's the nabber. The copper is the boy that makes sure that the wrong guy gets booked. This is scary.
Yeah, and Cyril Smith is stonewalling this, and Margaret Thatcher is refusing that the matter goes all the way to the Home Secretary for a public inquiry, right? But DNA comes out, right? DNA. This is the first case where they start using DNA. So they've got the clothing, unfortunately, got incinerated.
Of course it
but
did.
The laboratory did keep the sellotape padded when they pat it down with sellotape. They use this heavy sellotape, and they found fibres, and some of them fibres contained some of this semen. So, as a long shot, it's just come out. They said to the coppers, the lab, look, let's try this new thing called DNA. Anyway, they come up with two profiles. One is a profile of the young girl. Brilliant. You've got your victim.
Yep.
Right. And like you always do, as we mentioned with McCann, you go and you get the toothbrush and the hairbrush. And with McCann, what did we find? There was no hairbrush, and they said all the kids use the same toothbrush, which is nonsense. So we mentioned that last time.
We did, yeah.
So anyway, but the other DNA comes through, and bear in mind, our man Raymond Hewlett is a serial sex offender, and his DNA's on the database, right? It's not his. The semen's not his.
Okay.
Right. So, and the police didn't go and get him. Right. Now, what happens? Something bizarre happens. Right. I've just got to find this.
Okay.
So, a local man called Ronald Castree.
Okay.
53-year-old, and he's born on the 18th of October 1953. He's a taxi driver. He's come from a very abusive family background. His grandfather was
okay,
who went on to abuse his own children, his own son. He had a very unhappy upbringing. He was violent to his wife. He would regularly beat her, very controlling. He was unliked by his neighbours. He had a foul temper, and as we know, temper is trauma. So all fingers are now pointing to the fact that Ronald Castree is a victim and a survivor of horrific interfamilial sexual childhood abuse. Right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
He later on goes on to open a comic book shop, which really gives him unlimited access to children.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Ronald Castree, let's look at his offending. So, a year after this girl goes missing, bear in mind he lives on the same estate as this girl, as did our other man that we've just spoke about, right? On the 3rd of July 1976, Ronald Castree abducts and assaults a 9-year-old girl. Right? So there's two offences, the abduction and the assault of a 9-year-old girl. So this guy's a sex offender. He's not only is he a sex offender, he's an abductor. Right? Okay, similar as our man we just mentioned. But he goes to court and he's found guilty. It don't go to Crown Court, it goes to Magistrates Court. He's given a £25 fine.
What?
Now, back then, you didn't even get a lower fine for a traffic offence. So he got a fine lower than a bog standard traffic offence.
For abducting a child?
For abducting
and abusing a child?
And sex assaulting
wow.
a 9-year-old girl. Right? A 9-year-old girl. Right? So, a few years later, in 1978, he indecently assaults a boy, abducts a boy, and indecently assaults him. He goes to court. He's given a £50 fine. £50 fine. Right now, who's he friends with? You know,
Yeah.
he had a fixation with schoolgirls. He was sexually violent to his wife, very perverted. He used to cane her and beat her and all sorts. He would regularly frequent prostitutes. I mean, we're building up a profile of a very twisted, dangerous man. This is a very weird, horrible individual.
Yeah.
He's arrested in 2006 because he assaults a prostitute. Right, there's an argument over. You know, this guy's getting on now, and he's still very sexually active, very Sydney Cookie. You know, Sydney Cook was still sexually active in his 70s. You know, like I said, he used to masturbate 19 times a day. So this guy is strange, this Castree, because it's girls and boys. And like I mentioned before, these people are not homosexual, they're not bisexual, they're what they call trisexual. They'll try anything. They have, and the same, we found that with Brian Fields. You know, he would abduct and boys and girls.
It's the
So we're
same
seeing that it's whatever.
with
Right.
Savile as well.
Now, the one thing we have also got to look at with Castree is again with Fields. Fields abducted and raped, I think, a young girl while his wife was away having a child, or it was on the anniversary of either a childbirth or it was the anniversary of his divorce. It was one of them. And if we remember, Corinne always says, look at the dates, look at the crime scene, how the body is, and look at the dates in which they offend because they have meaning. Now, he is going out whilst his wife is in hospital having a kid, and this is when he abducts and sexually to a young girl. So it's punishment. So he's punishing this girl. So this guy could have been profiled, and he would have pinged up, right? So he's a sex in the area, right, in the same locality as Raymond Hewlett, and you can't tell me they don't know each other. You cannot tell me they don't know each
Now,
other.
Raymond Hewlett was the one who you were saying was connected to the McCanns, and
that's Raymond Hewlett, the first one.
Yeah.
Now Raymond Hewlett was prime suspect, and the police in their re-innovation, their cold case review of this said all along, Raymond Hewett's the one. He's the one. Now I
beg your pardon. Raymond Hewlett was the guy that was charged at the start.
No, he wasn't.
No.
They don't end up arresting and charging Raymond Hewitt. They go round and get Ronald Castree because his semen comes back from the assault on the prostitute. It goes through into the DNA database. Ping, ping, ping. It hits up. It matches up with a 30-year-old semen found on the body of little Leslie Molseed.
Wow.
So that's it. Bang. The police go round. In 2006 November, they arrest Ronald Castree for the murder and sexual assault of this little girl. Right? They don't pursue any other avenues. They just stick with him. Raymond Hewitt, the fact that his MO as well was masturbating on kids, it was exactly the same. The fact that his seed wasn't found matters not, in my opinion, matters not. And now Ronald Castree stands trial and he's found guilty. Right, he's found guilty and he's given 30 years for the abduction, sexual assault, and the murder of the girl. Raymond Hewitt, no. And despite the fact that Raymond Hewitt was spotted by 14 independent witnesses at the scene of the abduction, he was spotted, a man with his description, just before the body was dumped on the same area. But Ronald Castree, he's tied in because his semen was found on the girl. Now, I'm saying here that we have a ring.
It doesn't mean he dumped the body, though, John. It doesn't mean that Castree dumped the body.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It just means that he was physical. I mean, for argument's sake, we could say that Castree was part of a ring and she was part of the menu. I'm sorry, it's
Yeah.
to put it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. And then stabbed maybe ritualistically or whatever.
Yeah,
No contention.
100%. It all just fell into place there with me, because when we were talking about the guy tied to who was spotted with the Madeline case and with the independent witnesses, but then wasn't DNA evidence. It kind of makes sense that if there was a ring, the people who are members of the club aren't disposing of the the aftermath,
But,
and the people. My mind's blown. Like it's another one of
oh,
those nights, mate.
well,
Where
look at Sidney Cook. He was clearly the ringleader,
yeah,
and he got his sentence reduced on appeal, and he ended up doing a very minimal sentence for manslaughter when it should have been multiple murders,
yeah,
because he said he was a bit player in the paedophile ring, and Oliver and Bailey were the main thing. So you're seeing the same pattern, and again, fairground workers, itinerant people with a history of abducting kids. We've got it all here. We've got it all here. And then of course Cyril Smith stonewalling, blocking it. We've got the police covering up the corruption. Now what happens is, and this police officer then goes on to screw up the Yorkshire Ripper murders.
Oh, of course, yeah. Do you know? Excuse me, I'm wheezy. I feel like we need. I feel like this is something we need to sit down and delve into. This policeman that messes up, because I guarantee. And I tell you something else. How many other cases, if we were to draw a map, right, from where what's his name, Ronald Castree, right? If we were to put a dot in a map where Castree was, go back 31 years, look at abducted kids, missing homeless children, reported cases, and say what, like 100-mile radius of his house, 25-mile radius of his house.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching our podcast. Here's a word from our sponsor, Shopify. I feel like I'm missing out because everyone is starting a side hustle or their own business these days. And you know what they're hearing a lot? That's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're selling books or events like us, Shopify simplifies selling online and in person so you can successfully grow your business. Shopify covers all your sales channels, from a shop-front-ready POS system to its all-in-one e-commerce platform. Shopify even gets you selling across social media marketplaces like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Full of the industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth, Shopify gives you complete control over your business and your brand without learning new skills in design or coding. And thanks to 24/7 help and with an extensive business course library, Shopify is ready to support your success every step of the way. Look, there's so many options out there to expand your business these days. And what's lovely about Shopify is that no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify will be there to empower you with the confidence and control to take your business to the next level. It's time to get serious about selling and get Shopify today. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/Shaun, SHAUN, all lowercase. Go to shopify.co.uk/Shaun to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.co.uk/Shaun. That's the word from our sponsor. Thanks for watching. Link in description. Back to the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think we're going to see?
I know, and the fact also, let's look at this Raymond Hewlett with his job with a fairground worker. What fairground did he work for? What was his route? What was his plan? And then we got Castree working with kids in the comic book shop and things like that.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the fairground worker is the part of the team that's going to spot the kids, and then pass that knowledge on to the next part of the chain and follow the parents home or whatever. It seems like there is a scary method involved in here.
But the other thing that I think we really need to draw massive inference from was the fact that Channel 4 made this trilogy called Red Riding.
Yeah.
About everything we mentioned. It goes on about businessmen. It goes on about child child murder. It goes on about Masonic connections, political connections, police officers corrupt, anyone poking their nose in ended up dead, and little girls going missing, and the stitch up of Stefan Kiszko. Honestly, they've done it, and then Channel 4 removed it. And it was all about everything we mentioned tonight. And it was, when I was researching this, honestly, it put hairs up all down my back and on my arms. I'm thinking, my word. And at no point, and what's strange is Castree is found guilty, yet the police, when they did the cold case review, said it's Raymond Hewlett. He's the one. And of course, Raymond Hewlett then turns up in Praia de Luz, whatever it is. Is it Praia de Luz? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know, at the same time and date as a McCann thing. Again, I've got my own theories on the McCann thing, but this is weird. And the fairground
It's
worker,
really
the
weird.
it's man. I think we've got something here.
I think,
And
I honestly, when I said I felt sick earlier, it wasn't because of how dark the story was. It was because I felt like we just turned over a stone that we probably shouldn't have turned over a little. That sort of feeling, if you know what I mean.
I totally and utterly agree. I mean, all I would say is everything we mentioned is public domain, and those that we slagged off are dead.
Yeah, and I'd like to say, and I am not suicidal, so if I turn up with a fucking note beside me, that was someone wants to look into this. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, if because we do get a lot of armchair detectives follow our work. I get messages all the time, and I say to someone, please research the Leslie Molseed. There's been quite a lot on her back in the 2000s, early 2000s, and the late 1990s. So it did get that level of prominence and the publicity it sort of deserved, but it's sort of passed away now, and no one's really interested. But it's a massive cover up. It's, I mean, this is our little
like
UK Detroit.
I'm at the stage of buying a printer, printing off the cases, sticking them on the wall, and getting the red yarn out and starting to link things together because it's a huge pattern, and it's almost like when people start chattering too much about the possibility of this happening, all of a sudden there's something like a serial killer, or we have to invade somewhere else for oil, and then there's a big case, and everyone's like, oh great, the kids are safe now because we've caught the monster. But really, that's like when the drug dealers send 25 suitcases on the airplane, and they give up. They call ahead and dob in 2 of their own people to take the attention off the other 23.
Yeah, they'll get 2 girls with a kilo wrapped around their waist, won't they? So it's a distraction. Behind every good theft is always a distraction, and it's the same with these. And what are the chances of people, like Hewlett and Castree, being from the same area, involved in the same thing? There's no way they didn't know each other. And then with their criminal convictions at the same time for abducting boys and abducting girls. What are they abducting them for? They're abducting them for sex parties or whatever.
It's how many. Do you know? I honestly think they all come in pairs. The only ones that aren't in pairs are the 2 that knew each other, right? Which was Savile and the Ripper, right? How do we know that they weren't a couple together, coupled up by their team?
Well, again, they both cropped up in the Yorkshire Ripper case.
That's what I'm saying.
Savile was brought in because his teeth marks were found. They think that Savile's voice was the one on the hoax tape.
His body, he left the body outside
They become
Savile's
close
house.
friends in prison. They knew each other. And what's saying that Castree, with his liking of prostitutes, didn't know Peter Sutcliffe as well. I mean, Castree is an aggressive, woman-hating murderer. And when he gets fed up, it looks like he goes out and he tortures young kids and probably women. And it looks like he goes through his life being fed up.
Oh, man.
And Raymond Hewitt, pretty much the same. There seems to be, wherever he is, children are abducted and raped. And these 2 are both linked in with this little girl. And of course, with Cyril Smith cropping up, it's just Well, honestly, when I started researching this, I couldn't believe it. I
Yeah,
thought, oh my word.
when you said Cyril Smith, all the hair stood up on my body. Like it really did, because if you're watching this and you never heard of Cyril Smith, enjoy that nightmare fueled Google session rabbit hole that you'll be going down on that, because he is just a disgusting individual.
And I'm gonna I was gonna go into a second one, but I'll have to save this other one. But
Yeah, let's say
I'm
this
gonna
other one.
we're gonna dangle the line out.
Sure.
Dangle the
Do
bait
it.
here.
Dangle the worm.
Dangle the worm, and we're going to look at the missing girl. This is so similar, honestly, and this case, I promise you, is going to crop up more and more. This case,
Okay.
because I'm sure that this is linked into Fred West and many others. This is a far ring, and it's the town of Coatbridge in Scotland, which crops up all the time. Fred West was a resident of Coatbridge. Around this time, and it's that the missing girl Moira Anderson, who went missing in 1957. Her neighbour and her friend Sandra Brown always claimed, she actually wrote a book about it, that her dad, Alexandra Gartzhome, abducted and killed Anderson, and he was a local bus driver, and he actually made a confession that he did before he died, and he was involved in a big ring involving politicians and police officers and everything in the Coatbridge area. And again, Fred West was very active, sort of circa that sort of time in that area.
Yeah.
And little Moira Anderson. And then when you look at the case of Moira Anderson, it's exactly the same as this. They're all the same. It's a ring. These are not opportunistic,
you're
impulse-driven men.
Yeah,
It's a ring.
You've nailed it, and I think, do you know what? I think what I'm going to actually start doing is taking that whole thing of putting things on the wall with a red cord, but I'll make a digital version of it, a digital mind map, and we'll start building this, because I think we've struck on a narrative here that's tying too many things together. Too many people are interlocking. There seems to be patterns, and it needs to, and I need to see the data in front of me as graphically represented data, because I think when we see that, it's going to be disturbing, really disturbing.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. But this one, I would say, I mean, Detroit is it's just awesome when you start delving into Detroit, and that is frightening, and that is really explains how the whole system works. But this one was sinister. This poor girl, what she gone through, and what happened to her, and those involved, and the twists and turns, and the corruption and the cover-ups. This got everything. This has got everything, and no wonder Red Riding was made about this. And it was just by chance that I come across Leslie Molseed, and then I didn't realise that this was all linked in. And when I did, it just honestly, I've been about, and there's not much that makes me go give it that flipping heck moment.
Yeah.
But this certainly did. This certainly did. This was phenomenal. So I've had. It was like being back in the police. It was such a good moment for me to go through this.
Yeah.
I'd say I enjoyed it, but I don't want to be somber about this, but I sort of did. It gave me that investigative buzz again.
I was going to say, it's difficult to put it into words when you're doing investigative journalism, when you get excited about such a horrific breakthrough, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does.
It's not. It's when people hear that, it can trigger them, but it's not excitement in the way you think about it. It's like, got you back. Sort of feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I with Detroit, I thought, how can we can't top trumps this? We sort of reached the pinnacle here. And then
give John a couple of days, and no, here we go. We've got another one.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I no doubt that one more crop up, and I'll put it out there that if there's any case anyone thinks that we should be looking at, then please let us know, and we'll go through the merits of it.
Yeah.
And if it sort of ticks boxes, I'll happily look into it.
I think as well, John, and like I say, I keep going on about this because you've blown my mind again. I think what's going to actually happen, my prediction is, see, once we put this data into something visual, I think refreshing on how all these things link together and going over this theory and building on the map of events is probably what's going to snowball, if I'm being honest, because I think once we see it, your brain's going to go, oh, this guy, that guy, and you're going to start piecing more together, and then the two of us are going to be found at the bottom of a lake. But hey, in the search for truth, if you're not pissing someone off, you're not doing your job right. So,
well, and if we upset Peter, brilliant, we've done a good job.
yeah.
And what I'd like to know, because Cyril Smith was stopped in Northampton going up the M1 with a car full of child porn, and the police officers were sworn into silence, and the intelligence services got involved. Right now, Cyril Smith, did he know Mr. Dick Holland? At any point, did they rub shoulders? And also, do you remember Jimmy Savile would have these little meetings, wouldn't he, where he'd have this Friday club where he'd invite police officers in for drinks, Friday morning club. Did Dick Holland ever attend any of them? Dick Holland, he seems to crop up with a lot of regularity in the most serious miscarriages of justice. They all seem to be on his watch.
It's like I say, it's too many. They should have had the good sense to remove the policeman and bring in a new policeman each time. All right, to sort of put us off this theory. But the fact that this guy has been involved in, I can't remember what was the name of the policeman.
Dick Holland.
Dick Holland. Yeah, I mean, fool us once, you know the saying.
But, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
And the fact that he was promoted, dude, like that's the scary. Like, see if we could put all this down to a couple of bad apples, right?
Yeah.
But to see the bad apples not rot but flourish, right, and climb the ranks, it's all. This is going to be all consuming. This is what this is going to be. This is
in what has been classed as the biggest travesty of British justice. The case of Stefan Kiszko.
So why the fuck are we only hearing about it? Why are we only hearing about the biggest miscarriage of justice today? I mean, some of you might know it, but I'm telling you, this is a new one for me. Okay, and
but if we look at the Detroit case,
yeah,
they had an experienced magistrate leading that investigation. He's removed, and a guy who's never done an investigation ever, he's new to the bar, is given the job. A very similar sort of attitude. And, we got Dick Holland, who screwed up monumentally, and he's allowed to run another investigation, which goes on to be the biggest embarrassment of police detective work ever. And that, resulting in the loss of many more lives. And that's the Ripper inquiry. Cover up from start to finish. Same guy.
Oh, no. Is this guy still alive?
No, he died.
Oh,
he died.
God. Well, that's
God rot his soul.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll sleep a little bit better knowing that.
Yeah, exactly the same. When I read that he died, I made me smile. I thought, yeah.
Fucking hell.
You can't be predicting now.
Man. John.
So it's been a pleasure in the most macabre way. I think we've brought a little bit of justice somewhere along the line, and maybe this isn't the last we hear of this one. Who knows?
Dude, I wish you could see my face right now. Right? It's like I'm not gonna get any sleep tonight. This is gonna be me, my brain putting more of these blocks together, because I just feel like over the last 10 weeks you've been putting these little bits in place, knowing that you're going to go full circle and bring it in. And like I say, now's the time for me to put the data together, us to be able to see it, and as a community on this channel, start delving into this theory and really producing something that's credible, that is, with public knowledge and information that's already out there. Put all this together and really, really, really put forward something that spells that there is this global ring. And the evidence from what you've presented is damning.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. But
Yeah.
if anyone wants to do any homework, please find Red Riding, watch it, and it basically is a dramatisation of what we just spoke about. It's frightening, it's haunting, and it goes on to infer a lot worse than we have.
Yeah.
It goes on to businessmen, sex parties, Masonic links, all sorts, and it's a phenomenal three-parter.
Yeah, I mean,
Brilliant.
just type it into Google, Red Riding series. It's popped up for me already. I'm going to be taking a look at that. And John, thank you again for. I mean, I feel like every week I feel like I'm a fanboy of my own freaking podcast because I'm sitting here, man.
Yeah, I know.
It just
I
blows my
know.
mind. I just love it, and like I say, I genuinely feel like expanding on this theory is the way to go. So, like I say, I'll get working on some visuals, and as a community, we can start looking at the
Well,
legitimacy of all this because it's shocking, it's fascinating, and it's possibly the truth.
and maybe this work that we're doing, we might even uh, get an inquiry officially going. There might be a public inquiry into something that we mentioned that's been covered up, an investigation, or we might
Who's
end
going to
up
launch the
linking
inquiry? They're
pieces
all
of that have
like
been
the
done.
one
Who knows?
the one good policeman that's apparently exists that isn't part of this ring is going to launch an investigation. We're screwed, John. Okay, we're screwed. They were screwed.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just
Oh,
saying, I don't see any. The only thing that I can see really coming from this is us opening some fucking eyes, right? And if we get too close to anything too real, then it's scary, it's exciting, but it's real, man. It's a
yeah.
real. They
Yeah.
they they don't like people
It's
getting too
yeah.
close to this sort of thing, you know.
And my thoughts go out to not just to the Kiszkos and all that, but let's think about the families of Ronald Castree. His children, what they must have gone through, and his wife, what they must have gone through, and ultimately the family of Leslie Molseed. With the total incompetence that went on, and having to not only go through it once, but with the trial of Kiszko, but then have to go through it again
Yeah.
30 years later with the trial of this other piece of
Yeah.
Ronald Castree, and even now I think there's a huge question mark because I think this is a conspiracy. I think there's co-defendants in this.
Yeah, I think we'll allow this to be more than just a conspiracy theory. To be honest, it's too stacked with evidence. It's too stacked with repeating patterns, and we've seen it too many times.
Well, I mean, the conspiracy in the legal term, where
Yeah.
two or
Okay.
more,
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I beg your
not
pardon.
husband and wife, get together, to for the purpose of crime. So conspiring,
Yeah. I
conspire.
think the fact that all these individuals are connected and so close to where the body was found. There was the witnesses of the guy whose DNA didn't match, and how it just all paints a picture of somebody who partakes in the abuse and somebody who disposes of the bodies after the parties, shall we
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
And
And we saw that with Sidney Cook.
we did,
Different people had different jobs.
yeah,
So yeah, and this is how these things work. So
yeah.
and when I saw Fairground Worker,
Oh man,
oh, that was it. I was on one. I was on a mission then.
yeah. I mean, it's scary. And I tell you what, you've ruined Blackpool for me. Like when I'm down in Blackpool now, and there's like the fairgrounds and all this, I'm just like, oh no. I'm just
Yeah,
looking at
yeah,
him, I'm just like, oh no. Like, and there's always one or two weird looking guys who are wearing shorts that are too short and too tight, and they've no kids, and they're hanging about in places where families hang out, and it's just like, no, it's awful.
yeah.
It's awful. But listen, John, thank you again. This tonight has been a mind blower, and like I say, I can't wait to build on this. Tell us what you guys think down in the comment section, and we will definitely be back next week. And like I say, I'll get working on the visuals because I think telling a story over so many weeks, presenting so many mind blowing facts. It's time now to see it all brought together, and I think that's when the real feeling of sickness is going to kick in, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. So, well, thank you ever so much.
No bother, mate. Well, listen, thank you everyone for watching. Please leave a like. Please subscribe to the Sean Attwood channel. Find John's links and my links down in the description. Please come and follow us on our platforms too. And we will see you next time. Thank you very much, John.
Cheers.
And from me, as always, guys, Ron Swanson. Be safe out there.
Why, I wondered, would the wing governor take him to his office at lunchtime in clear breach of prison rules? That was perhaps the start of my problems at the Scrubs. I was thinking and asking questions whilst the rest of the officers just accepted things the way they were. But I knew something was wrong here, and I would, I felt sure, eventually discover exactly what. Shortly after 1 p.m, I saw the wing governor with the inmate next to him walking along the wands. "Officer, lock him up," he shouted to me, and the prisoner walked up the stairs to his cell. Opening the door, I asked him a direct question. "What on earth are you doing with the governor?" He was a typical East End villain, big build, over 200 pounds, cheeky smirk on his face, and a casually offensive tone. "I wouldn't ask if I were you, boss. Way above your pay grade." After locking him inside his door, I walked away, wondering what on earth that was all about. But I would find out. I was determined to do that, as all my instincts told me that matters here needed to be looked at. I sensed the governor was up to no good. It just looked wrong. As I said, this incident was the start of my troubles, though at the time, I didn't know it, I'd crossed the path of a senior member of the Freemasons.